Hello, listeners. Welcome to my story. Here we will explore what would happen if Doomsday fell into Warhammer 40,000 in my own way. Grab yourself a joint and some plutonium and enjoy the story. He arrives like a thrown moon. Atmosphere peels in sheets, the sky goes from bruised to magnesium white. A continent of scrap hives and gantry forests turns to look at the incoming star and screams the same word in a million throats. Whack! The echoes get lost under impact. A sea-sized crater blooms. Stompas topple like bad ideas. Steel rains. Teeth rain. For a full minute, there's only gravity, heat, and the hiss of new glass. In the center of the crater, the thing stands up. Bone spurs like murdered cathedral ribs. Skin like tank rubber stretched over artillery. Where he's torn, he's already healing. Where he's hit, he's already learning. He doesn't breathe. He just registers the world and starts walking. Week 1, the welcome party. Orcs don't scout, they arrive. Warbikes first, roaring through slag fog, sluggish chatter, choppas rise, knobs barrel in with power claws that could quarter a battle tank. The first claw takes a chunk out of his chest. He reels a step. The second claw hits bone that wasn't there 5 seconds ago and throws sparks like regret. Little green bodies get turned into red mist when he swats. Then the mist becomes spores, and the ground becomes tomorrow's mob. The orcs love this. New fight. New friend. New funeral. Weird boys whip green lightning that makes the air thicker than soup. A shock attack gun teleports something mean and confused into his torso. He spasms once, grows inward spikes, and the intruder exits as noise. Stompas wade in like drunk cathedrals. A belly gun gets a clean line and blasts him with a furnace-hot sunbeam. He staggers, plates over, and the next shot runs off like rain on carved stone. By nightfall, the rim of the crater is a stadium. Mechs clamber over each other, adding more to guns that already shouldn't work. Gretchen run betting pits and get stabbed for the odds. The thing in the pit doesn't look up. He's still adjusting. Week 2. The green tide learns back. Octarius exhales spores. Everywhere he flattened in the morning is pulsing with new life by evening. Mob sizes double, toy sizes triple. Mechs weld together liftadroppas, tractor arrays, and super cannons that recoil a city block. Weird boy towers hum like a migraine. The whoosh field gets loud enough to turn thunder into background music. They catch him mid-leap in a liftadroppa cone, gravity bottled and sharpened. Dreads and cans pile on. Claws and saws carving fireworks off his hide while a weird boy choir pours psychic sludge down his spine. He rear-chitex under the pressure. Bones shift to channel force, dermis densifies, new ridges grow along his shoulders that drink charge out of the air. The bottled gravity slides to his back like water off oil. Then he throws a pulse. First one is messy, a raw shock ring that deletes a street's worth of orcs and peels plates off a stompa. The second is less messy, shaped enough to break a gargant's knee without downing the tower behind it. He's not thinking, he's iterating. Pain in, solution out. War bosses start naming him. Da spiky whack. Da crump that crump's back. One paints his jaw white and charges with 50 commandos on a squiggoth wearing too many guns. The squiggoth dies like a landslide. The boss dies laughing. His spores start a new mob before his boots cool. Week 3. Planet-sized tactics orc strategy is evolution with a punchline. They reroute rail lines toward the crater. Foundry yards get relabeled Doomsday yards. Custom force field lattices go up. Mile-tall hexes meant less to protect boys than to scramble his energy pulses. Weird boys get wired into copper cages so the whoosh doesn't blow them apart while they sing. The sky tears open like wet paper. It hits him like a psychic tsunami. His knees dip 1 inch. That's all the proof orcs ever need. They triple down. He grows new countermeasures, antlered bone fins along his scapulae that bleed the storm into himself. He metabolizes the charge and fires it back uglier, greener, tighter. Mechs cheer because from a certain angle it's art. A war boss with a good sneer and better aim orders gargants to target the fault lines. Stompas pound the spaces between. Weird boy choirs push subsonics into the crust. The land smiles too wide and breaks. He falls a kilometer. They try to bury him under the world. For 3 hours it works. Then the mantle flares. He comes up glazed in ceramic bone and black glass, heat shimmering off him like a mirage. The next belly gun shot curves, space itself wrinkling around a problem the planet hasn't solved yet. Week 4, Equilibrium of Horrors. By week 4, the fight finds a rhythm. They scale. He adapts. Orcs scale, more bodies, bigger hulls, choir-wired weird boys, KFF scaffolds that turn districts into humming beehives, river barges converted into gun rafts, squiggoth herds with armor thick as lies, and a newborn mega-gargant walking on infant god legs. He adapts. Denser dermis, bone geometry that remembers where gargant plates part, EMP-like sidebands that switch off tractor beams, anti-psionic ridges that drink whack and spit murder, temperature regulation flirting with geothermal. He is not learning to leave. He is learning to be here. The Mega Gargant brings a Dakka sky, so much fire it qualifies as weather. It pins him 14 seconds. The bridge boss bellows a victory speech nobody hears over the guns and gets nailed to the horizon by a bone spear the size of a train. He bleeds. The blood boils. Bone mosaics close the hole while the crowds on the rim chant louder. Food stalls open on the siege lines. Grot vendors hawk Doomsday hats. 5 clans claim naming rights for the glowing slag sea. They change the signs with artillery. Month mark, a fight that feeds itself. A month in, Octarius is singing murder songs loud enough to rattle orbit. The crater is an inland furnace wound. Industrial output has pivoted from everything to destroy that, which is orc for civic pride. The planet's whack is so loud that Gretchen on the far side dream in green. He doesn't leave, not because of a leash, not because of a rule, but because the planet keeps feeding him. Any step outward draws fresh tides of boys, tractor snares like spiderwebs, and god engine barrages that turn the horizon into moving light. His adaptations have tuned to Octarius like a lock to a key. Walking away is inefficient. Standing his ground is optimal predation. So he plants himself in the slag sea, a black glass titan wreathed in heat mirage, while the world brings itself to him. Mobs, engines, storms of green thought. The equilibrium is vicious and weirdly joyous. Orcs escalate, he mutates, the crater widens, and tomorrow promises a fight neither side can finish. He doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. The message is written in fault lines and shattered hive hulls. Keep coming. The slag sea cools to a skin and cracks like old paint. Under it, the world is still molten. Over it, the sky is guns. Week 5. Dograb. The surviving war boss from the month 1 meat lottery gets an idea so big it needs scaffolding. He orders a walking fortress the size of a small city, 6 titanic legs, a forest of tractor arrays, twin liftadropas, and a custom force field lattice domed inward like a steel beehive. The plan is orc perfect. Put the fight in a box and then shake the box. They march it straight into the slag sea, footing hissing, pistons screaming, boys chanting. The dome drops with a sound like a cathedral closing its jaw. Tractors hook the air around Doomsday and nail it in place. Gravity folds, the floor becomes a direction. Weird boy choirs in copper cages pour whack into the lattice until it shines emerald and mean. For almost a minute, it looks like engineering won. Then the bone starts to sing. Ridges along his back realign into a ribbed instrument and push a vibration through the cage. Subsonic, ugly, precisely wrong for orc hardware. The KFF flickers. Tractors stutter. Mechs slap dashboards. Grots die in showers of sparks. He steps once. Plates grind. He steps again. The third step is a punch to the lattice itself. An energy scythe that isn't quite light, isn't quite sound, and the dome unseams along its hexes like rotted thread. Dograb. Collapses in sections. A leg goes sideways. The warboss on the top deck laughs just long enough to be pinned to his own banner by a bone lance the length of a commuter train. Lesson learned. On both sides. Cages work briefly. He can tune now. Week 6. Weather War. Octarius votes with factories. The mechs pivot to sky machines. Weird boy towers get taller. Their ground cables glow dull red with waste heat. KFF pylons link across districts until you can see a net in the clouds. The planet makes weather out of wah! Rolling green supercells that chain lightning together in kilometer-long braids, rain that falls as hot nails, wind that smells like hot copper and old engines. The storm hits the crater like a god's tantrum. He answers with geometry. The bone horns along his scapulae articulate like shutters and fan the storm into organized lines. Charge gets drunk and converted. He throws it back as tight beam pulses that punch holes through weather and stomp us in the same breath. A shock attack gun tries to thread him with something feral from not quite here. The new dermal layout routes the intruder into a bone sump that chews it to memory. The orcs escalate. Word boy choirs, 20 to a stack, heads in braced cages, tongues black with ozone, chanting until their teeth smoke. The field pressure becomes physical, air thick as pudding, the thoughts hard to push through. He thickens in response. A second skin of translucent mineral grows over the old, psionics sliding off it like butter on glass. When the choir overcranks and 3 weird boys pop like overripe fruit, the rest cheer and turn the dials further right. By week's end, he's throwing clean pulses. Edges so crisp they leave right-angle shadows in shattered ferrocrete. The weather keeps coming. He keeps eating it. Week 7. Rock season. Someone with more ambition than sense orders a rock drop. Not from orbit. Octarius is busy, but from the far side. A mountain hollowed and engine strapped, ridden across sky by mechs, banging on the hull with wrenches to keep her keen. They steer it by prayer and tractor, line it up over the slag sea and let gravity do the sermon. The world darkens, the cheering becomes a physical object. The rock meets something it didn't expect, a column of force rising out of the crater, invisible except for what it does to air and light. It doesn't stop the impact, it thins it, stretching the fall across time and distance until the rock hits like a slow avalanche instead of a hammer. It still hits. The slag sea erupts, a caldera vomiting light and metal. For a while, there is only noise. Then a shape lifts the rock like a boulder and throws it back at the siege line. It plows a canyon through 3 tiers of gun emplacements and a food court. The Doomsday hats go flying. A grot catches one in shock and screams triumph until a squig sits on him. He comes out of the steam bigger, not taller so much as denser. The edges of him are cleaner, the plates more interlocked, the silhouette moving from monster to architecture designed to survive artillery. Rock drops become a thing. Mechs refine the aim. He refines the column. Factory lines start stamping Roque Season onto souvenir mugs. Week 8. The cage that walks Megagargant Mupkak 2 waddles onto the field with an idea bolted into its spine. Teleport a lattice, scaled to problems that refuse to be where you put them. The bridge is a screaming rainbow of levers. The war boss in charge wears 3 hats and no shirt because shirts concede weakness. He points and shouts, "Put him deep." The world around Doomsday tears. Not space, exactly, but the agreement about where things are. For a fraction, he is beneath the slag, then above the storm, then threaded through a dozen KFF cells at once. The lattice tries to jam him down, meters, then kilometers, then straight into the mantle to let geology finish the job. He anchors. New bone grows like piles down his legs, invisible spears that bite the planet's faults and hold. The tele-lattice squeals, starts to drag the planet instead. Cracks spiderweb across the slag sea's skin. The Megagargant's crew debate whether this is good or very good, and are halfway to voting very when the anchoring piles release. The stored torque whiplashes back up the lattice. The Megagargant's spine unbraids. Its head falls off. The war boss salutes as it goes. He respects innovation. The orc answer is immediate: cage the anchor. Mechs swarm the beach with pylons taller than churches, then drilling them into bedrock in a hex around the crater. Each pylon wears a tractor, a KFF node, and a choir cage. The goal isn't to move him, it's to clip the new trick, stop him from grabbing bedrock. They almost manage it. He responds with a hemispheric pulse that turns every pylon switch off at once for 3 heartbeats. A neat, tidy EMP imitation customized to orc tolerances. In Heartbeat 4, the pylons fail dramatically. In Heartbeat 5, the weird boys in the cages explode less dramatically, but more messily. The 2nd month mark, ritual and range. By the end of month 2, the fight has habits. The slag sea is a calendar, each new layer of cooled crust marked by shellfire graffiti, then broken again when something enormous falls on it. Bridges come and go. Gun bridges with stalls selling squig on a stick, card tables, and painted signs arguing whose turn it is to charge. Commandos try clever. Smoke squigs, glue bombs, to sneaky gas that makes Marines cry. The dermal filters he grows in his jaw catch the chemistry before it's born. Pain boys propose surgery on the WAG itself, brewing serums and sticking weird boys with tubes until the field hums in one note. It crushes lesser minds. He grows stepped ridges along his skull like a Faraday temple, and the pressure becomes food. And him? He stops wasting motion. The pulses leave no overspray. A Gargant loses a knee, and nothing behind it even blushes. Bone lances arrive at their targets with the rude punctuality of freight trains. He can throw a thin line of force across a district to cut a tractor beam without touching the tower holding it. When a deaf dread leaps at his throat, it hits a geometry that wasn't there a breath ago and comes apart along planned seams. He still doesn't leave. Not because he's held. Because this place keeps offering the next lesson before the last one cools. Walk away and you lose the gradient. Stay and you grow. The orcs feel it too. The joy is obscene. Clans repaint themselves weekly. Boys travel continents for their turn. A cult springs up that worships the crater as the heart that hates back. They sell charms, broken bone shards. Real? Fake? Doesn't matter. On strings. The hats get taller. On the last night of the second month, the sky goes quiet for the first time in weeks. No lightning, no rocks, no choir, just furnace glow and the murmur of a million engines idling. Across the slag, something new stands up. Unfinished, impossible, bristling with pylons aimed inward like spears. A walking fortress town with its streets on the outside and its guns facing in. Not to shoot him from afar, to house the fight around him, to make close permanent. Markets built into murder decks, ammo churches. A hospital that's just a pain boy tent with a hose. They're not trying to kill the storm anymore, they're building a city to live in it. He watches it take its first steps, monumental, careful, proud. Bone along his forearms telescopes out into blades that could split an avenue. The air around him hums with disciplined malice. He's ready for the new shape. He's hungry for it. Tomorrow, the city will arrive. Tomorrow, the lesson will be different. Tomorrow, the crater gets a new name written in artillery. He does not speak. But the fault lines and the glow and the patient rhythm of his breathless body write the only sentence that matters. Keep coming. The walking fortress town makes landfall at dawn, legs slamming like verdicts. Its streets spiral inward around a hollow square, the arena that'll never be empty. Shops open, guns open. Priests of Dhaka bless the ammo with spit. Doomsday steps into the square. He's heavier now. You can hear it in the steel. Week 9. Heat theory. The orcs try constant contact. No more lulls. The city walks with him inside it. Tiered balconies vomiting boys and deaf dreads down ramps that refill as fast as they empty. Tractor beams sew the air into a cage. KFF nodes buzz like hornets. Under pressure, he stops being a set of reactions and starts being a system. Bone plates hinge and vent like radiator shutters. Dermis grows capillaries that aren't for blood, they're for charge. The old shock rings compress to a palm-wide corona that scythes clean lines through armor at arm's length. The first big pulse of the month knocks the inner promenade flat and cooks 3 squiggoths in their harnesses. Mechs take notes between screams. Pain boys run in with hoses and leave grinning. He's not just enduring heat anymore. He's manufacturing it. Week 10. Choir of one weird boy directors climb the city spires and sink 1,000 throats. The pressure turns the sky to glass. Below, grot riggers bolt copper spines into the streets to ground the overflow, which only encourages the choir. He answers with architecture. Ridges along his skull step like a temple. The old negative lightning fins re-articulate into a crown of tuned bone. Every orc shout, every engine growl, every psychic hiccup lands on that crown and slides into him as food. When he fires it back, it's not a ring anymore. It's a layer, a radial sheet that peels outward waist-high, hugging the ground, clean enough to leave intact railings and remove the boy leaning on them. An hour later, the sheet is narrower and hotter. It fuses the city's teeth into a continuous grin of glass. Orcs skate on molten decks to get close. They fall in love with the burns. Mechs scrawl a new warning on the promenade walls. No standing next to day invisible knife. Week 11. The Molten Heart. They try to smother him again. Telly lattice at full, tractor web like steel wool, mega gargant cannons bracketing fire so thick the air goes white. The city starts to sink on its own foundations, legs chiseling into softened bedrock. He roots. Not piles this time. Roots. Bone grown down in braided cords, drinking heat, drinking pressure, drawing up black glow like sap. The slag sea he made in month 1 relights from below. A heat mirage fog rolls across the city. Boys paint mustaches in the condensation and charge blind. Inside him something changes. It isn't a heart, it's a knot. A closed path where energy runs and reruns until it forgets how to leak. Every strike that hits him lands in that knot. Every step he takes is a test of its walls. When he blows, it's not rage. It's maintenance. A pulse goes out that makes the walking city sit down. Not a blast, a reconfiguration. KFF nodes trip open like flowers. Tractors lose their grip. 3 tiers of shanties collapse into the arena in neat concentric slides, like the planet politely clearing its throat. He stands in the center, venting steam like a train, plates opening and closing in a steady rhythm. Between vents, you can see the glow under the skin. Not nuclear, planetary. Week 12. 2 suns in the bones. Word spreads on Octarius. He's cookin'. Clans march for a turn in the heat. Grot vendors sell anti-burn juice, its squig urine dyed red. Pain boys set up a clinical study, where the therapy is get burned again, but harder. The mechs hold a think and bash and decide to stack fields. KFF over KFF over KFF, latticed so their hexes interlock into a honeycomb dome. Then they wheel in the big gamble. A reverse lifter they swear will push instead of pull, squeezing the air itself until his pulses have nowhere to expand. They're half right. The dome goes up. The reverse lifter rams the atmosphere into a bowl you can see. Sound dies. Fire crawls instead of leaps. The whole arena looks underwater. He compresses with it. Armor tightens. Spurs fold back and interlock like turbine blades. The crown on his head narrows into a spike. Every vent shutters shut, and the glow under the skin intensifies from orange to white to the blue you only see in furnaces that forget fear. For 6 seconds, nothing moves. On 7, the knot in his chest opens. The first release is surgical, a spear-straight beam that carves a square through the honeycomb, through the reverse lifta, through the spire behind it, and leaves a geometric hole in the sky that takes a full breath to remember how clouds work. The second release is the one the planet remembers. It isn't a mushroom cloud. KFFs don't allow theatrics that obvious. It's a flat, expanding plate of force and heat that pancakes outward at street level and then climbs the dome, pressing it out until every hex hits its tolerance and fails in a daisy chain. The walking city's outer tiers rip away like foil. Mega gargants on the perimeter lean, then kneel, then stay there because their joints have annealed into smooth regret. The yield, if you were the kind of maniac who measured such things on Octarius, lands in the ugly neighborhood of 2 atomic bombs. Not a guess. A statement hammered into metal. Steel runs like wax for blocks. Ferrocrete froths. Boys on the far balconies get tanned through armor. The shock arrives as a shove you feel in teeth. Then the wind remembers its job and drags smoke and sparks sideways in a single, roaring ribbon. He's in the center, armor reopened, vents fluttering like a machine's lungs. Everything closes clean, rubble, just glassed earth and the silver footprints of things that used to be. Further out is chaos. Flipped gun bridges, laughing casualties, pain boys sprinting with buckets, mechs already sketching Mach 2 domes on burning tabletops. The orcs are ecstatic. They have new numbers to shout. They have new burns to compare. They have a new floor for how loud tomorrow can be. Doomsday lifts his head. The crown cracks, sheds, regrows sharper. The knot tightens down again, patient, hungry. He steps, and the glass under his foot crazes into a star. Month 3 ends with a horizon of green banners all pointing inward, a city rebuilding itself around the crater, and a planet that now knows exactly how much it takes to make him glow like that. He doesn't speak. The message is still the same, written brighter, stamped deeper, carried on heat that tastes like iron. Keep coming. The city rebuilds in rings, burned tiers hammered flat, fresh gantries slapped down, market stalls nailed to ammo depots because food and shells are both forms of love here. The slag sees skin crazes and refuses by the hour. Wind drags a ribbon of sparks from horizon to horizon like a comet that forgot to leave. Doomsday stands in the middle of it all, vents whispering, plates still faintly white at the seams from last month's double sun outburst. He's quiet the way furnaces are quiet. Inside, something tightens and unwinds in loops, learning how to be better at violence. The orcs come on time because time is the only thing they can't chew. Drums, warbikes, squiggoth barges with painted jawlines, weird boy choirs in copper head cages, mechs riding their own inventions because seatbelts are for cowards and pilots. A new honeycomb of custom force fields climbs the sky like a steel beehive, each hex stamped with clan glyphs and insults. He wades into them and the fight starts again, like a prayer that never got bored. Week 13. The taste of the fight. Pressure changes things. It rubs grooves and habits, and then the habits become geometry. Somewhere between the 4th tractor snare and the 8th Def Dread piledriver, he stops enduring and simply wants. It's not thought. It's not language. It's a vector laid across the knot in his chest. More. More heat. More impact. More stimulus to provoke the next shape. The craving shows up as engineering. Bone plates hinge open in narrower vents to keep the glow bottled until the last ugly second. Dermis filaments braid tighter so charge can move faster. The crown along his skull sharpens into a ladder of tuned ridges. The world's noise falls down those steps and becomes current in him. And the fight. Oh, the fight answers. Boys throw themselves from balconies as if gravity were a dare. Commandos press glue bombs into seams that weren't there and somehow find purchase anyway. Mega-gargants lean like skyscrapers arguing with wind, and every barrel they own draws a bead on his silhouette. The city walks, turning the arena into a treadmill that never empties. 1,000 small clevernesses, all aimed at the center. He wants more. He takes it. He kills a war boss by turning a shock ring into a tight waist-high plate that sweeps the deck clean. The body lands across a bolted lunch counter. Boys who were eating watch him take 3 steps, bend, and without ceremony, bite. He tears a green shoulder free and swallows. Chewed metal, blood like hot copper, skin that tastes like the smell of engine rooms, the throat that has never needed lungs still knows how to make room. The mask goes somewhere. He does it again. Another mouthful. 2. 10. Not frenzy. Protocol. Every piece that enters vanishes inside him like stone dropped into a quarry. Splashless, inevitable. Plates shift to accept it. The knot in his chest brightens. Orcs on the nearest gantry freeze. Then they howl, half laughter, half the kind of joy that breaks bones. He's eaten, boys. That's Propa. Move, I want to be next. A pain boy scribbles nutritive profile on a board and gets trampled by volunteers. He finishes the war boss and turns to the next fight already happening, because the fight is always already happening. There's nothing deliberate about it. The eating is a subroutine. Kill, use, move. Inside, math obeys him. Half the stolen matter becomes mass. Plates denser, seams thicker, spurs with less flex and more truth. The other half doesn't become anything you can touch. It takes up residence deeper than marrow, down where his bones remember other worlds and old tricks. It pressurizes something asleep. The orcs try to take his head off with a lift-a-drop volley. The air around him goes thick as boiled tar. He doesn't budge. He does it again, bends, bites, swallows. The craving draws a clean chart. More fight, more intake, more heat in the knot. The next shape arrives sooner. The city notices. It pivots. The planet reacts, first adjustments. Octarius is a machine that eats inputs for breakfast. When the input changes, so does the menu. Mechs. Immediately design keep your bits harnesses. Hateful webbing of spiked buckles and whirring saw rings meant to shred themselves before a bite can claim a full limb. Half of them jam. The other half simply feed him metal with the meat. Rounds of applause, then back to welding. Declare that being eaten is psychotherapeutic. They begin painting arrows on willing boys. Bite air, big spiky lad. They also brew squig milk fortifiers to make greenskin flesh denser. 2 grots die testing. The tested boy grins wider. Weird boys. Tune their choirs to push hunger into the wag! A psychic seasoning. The field around the crater begins to taste like iron and ripe fruit in the back of simple minds. Grots faint from joy. Get up, faint again. Cults. A new badge appears. 2 teeth crossed under a bite mark. Cult of the Champa. Members swear to run toward the mouth when it opens. It spreads faster than a fungus joke. He keeps killing and keeps eating. A knob swings a chain claw that would cut a dreadnought in half. The first strike grazes his ribs and leaves a shallow groove. The knob laughs. The second strike meets a new geometry and shears free of its own chain in a burst of sparks. Doomsday breaks the knob over his knee, tears the torso, drinks the lesson. Half to mass. Half to the sleeping thing. The sleeping thing rolls over. Week 14. Unlock It comes without thunder, but everything inside him agrees that thunder would be appropriate. A weird boy choir tries for beauty. 20 throats, 1 note, a pillar of green pressure tuned to hum along the city's metal bones. The resonance threads him like wire. It doesn't hurt. It reminds. The knot steps over some invisible threshold and stops being a knot. It's a loop with a valve. The old crown crackles. Behind the plates of his face, something lights in 2 tight lines that meet in a mean V between the eyes. He looks at a Stampa. He cuts the Stampa with heat. No bloom. No spray. Just a thick beam that carves a square through its belly gun, its spine, and the three boys arguing inside about which lever is luckiest. The beam sandblasts everything behind into clean silhouettes, then it winks out as if embarrassed by its own efficiency. The orcs go berserk, a cheer like a cliff collapsing. Mechs hug, then immediately argue that they invented it by accident with the choir. Weird boys scream from head cage feedback and call it holy. He turns. There's a warbike line with a Def Copta squadron hovering above, rotors shredding smoke. He lifts his head and the new vision coughs once. Two thick beams that start as white and walk into blue the way a furnace does when it stops being kind. The bikes cease to be motor vehicles. The Coptas become glittering rain. He stops. The beams fade. The glow inside drops half a step and then reloads like a discipline being learned. Somewhere below the belt of mass and plate and anger, something else wakes with it. Flight. The first attempt is ugly. He crouches. Bone along his calves hammers inward, locking like pistons. Spurs on his back shove air into a shape that doesn't have a word. He jumps and doesn't descend. He hangs, 4 meters up, a silhouette made of knives balanced on a column of push. Tractor beams claw him like fishing lines. They slip. The air down his spine turns to gradient. Not wings, not jets. Just a refusal to fall. He tilts. He moves. The city tries to cage him in 3 dimensions. KFF hexes tilt their plane to close overhead. Lift-a-Droppas bracket upward, trying to squish flight into ground. Mega-Gargants raise their barrels for angles they hate because aiming up feels like admitting failure. He goes higher and cuts a hole in the sky with heat. The beams are not messy. They are thick. Not so much light as a decision about where matter is allowed to be. They weld KFF seams shut by fusing the nodes, then walk those seams apart an instant later by overpressurizing the joints. They draw a rectangle through a lift-a-droppa and leave it a wireframe of ash. They smear a Mega-Gargant's crown into glass and leave its boss hollering through a mouthful of bright gravel. He is not graceful. He is correct. Half of every mouthful from the day has been heading toward this. Now that the locks are open, the allocation changes. The measuring thing inside him, no organ, just a rule, flips its bookkeeping. 50% of intake is still mass, plates thicker, vectors truer, inertia more honest. The other 50% no longer goes to unlocking. It goes to acceleration. Transformations that used to take a minute take a heartbeat, and the strength of each ability ratchets up a click every time the system gets fed. Eat, grow, heat vision brighter, flight steadier, everything else sharper. The craving becomes a cycle he can see the shape of. The planet reacts second adjustments. The first adjustments were improvisation. The second are policy. Airspace becomes a real word on Octarius. Tractor arrays get stacked in vertical grids. Defcopta cults drill ball up, then scatter, then ball again. A handful of unlucky pilots test the plan by exploding attractively. Reflectoplates, bad mirrors. Mechs swear will bounce beams. They don't. They scatter the thickness into flowers of heat that set entire platforms on fire. Mechs celebrate, call it arty, and install more. Wordboy anti-zap choirs get their own spires. Their job, not to attack, but to sour the air above him with psychic static. He drinks it like rain. Cult of Dechampa formalizes with chants, parades, and menus. Volunteers paint bite targets on themselves and practice dramatic lunges. It's morbid and beautiful, and entirely orc. The ecology joins in because orcs aren't a species so much as an ecosystem wearing boots. Spores bloom in his wake in sheets, every blood splash a future stadium. Squigs mutate around heat, breeds with plates like frying pans, breeds that like being cooked and then decide not to die afterward. Grots learn new words for sizzle. Everything on the planet that can eat does, and everything that can be eaten lines up for a turn because being consumed by a better fight is religion here. He rises again, steadier now. The heat vision sweeps and chooses, lines tight enough to tunnel an axle out of a rolling stampa without scuffing its paint. The beams grow a little thicker with each swallow. The push down his spine gets cleaner, the column narrower, the control less effort and more habit. Week 15. The climb. They try to starve him. It's a novel thought for orcs. Don't feed the monster feels wrong in their mouths. but a war boss who cares about results more than ritual orders siege discipline. Staggered waves, empty deck hours, tractor fields that yank volunteers back off the lip when they run toward the bite. The Cult of Dechampa riots. The war boss has them deputized as ration queue managers. They wear armbands and still throw themselves in when the line closes. It's an improvement. He answers like weather. Flight makes range trivial. Hunger makes range something he can measure. He doesn't need the city to come to him if the city drags its feet. He goes to it, short, mean arcs of motion at roof height, bone spurs cutting through gantry forests like the prow of a ship through seaweed. He eats, and the ratio takes care of the rest. Half to plate, half to the accelerator. The lifts and lift-a-droppas try to pin him midair. He stacks a pulse on the down column and rips through them like they're accounting errors. Heat vision now has drag. The beam doesn't just cut, it pulls. A thick, hungry thread that drags slag into curls and bends girders toward it like plants to sun. He learns to pinch it, a wider fan to scour crowds, then a pencil beam to carve signatures through mega-gargant joints. The pencil writes fast. By the third day of ration tactics, the war boss is forced to reverse the policy. The city is being eaten from the edges inward because the monster learned to shop. Volunteers are reinstated. The cult throws a parade and calls it open buffet. Pain boys offer loyalty to tattoos that double as marinade recipes. The mechs, inspired by the beams, invent not-reflecta plates. Thick sinks meant to absorb the heat and channel it to boilers for steam cannons. They work for 4 seconds, then turn into the cannon's ammo. He climbs higher. KFF domes tilt to deny him angles. He flies under them, hugging decks so tight his wake rattles rivets. The push column down his spine narrows further until it's almost intimate, a private grammar between him and gravity. He can stop, dead stop in the air now, not because of lift, but because falling has become optional. The beams lengthen. Mechs start timing them and get numbers they like to chant. 4 seconds, 5! They aim to force him to overheat. He doesn't. The knot eats everything that isn't used and spins it back as strength. He kills, eats, climbs, burns. The cycle tightens. The craving smiles. Week 16, Apex Habit. He wakes without waking. The fight gets up first and stretches. The city is now a crown of walking tears around a lake of glass and steam, and he's the jewel tearing at its setting. By now the transformation lag is gone. Once he needed a breath to grow new ridges, a blink to hinge plates, a heartbeat to change from ground algorithm to sky algorithm. Now those are the same algorithm. Bone moves in real time. Spurs write answers onto his skeleton as the question arrives. The crown tunes itself mid-note when Weird Boy choirs shift keys. The heat vision modulates without thought as targets change. The push column down his spine flexes with intent alone, and the strength of everything continues to ratchet. He notices it in trivialities. When he lands, the deck crater's cleaner, sharper edges, deeper star cracks. When he swats, bodies leave less debris. Not annihilation, just better breakage. When he bites, the swallow happens further forward in the throat. Efficiency is its own drug. The orcs are in love. They paint murals of the bite. They brew songs for the beams. A Weird Boy publishes, by screaming, a treatise that insists all this is proof that the wah field likes being eaten as much as it likes being shouted. Several heads explode in agreement. A new figure arrives on the lip. An old mech with a face like a chewed bolt and a belly full of grudges. He rolls out a plan the size of a train car and jabs it with a wrench. We's gonna mech a sun. Not metaphor. He sketches a wad candle. A battery made of Weird Boy skulls, KFF nodes, and a mountain of promethium meant to ignite and stay ignited. A captive star in a cage of vibes. The city loves it. They build too. He sees the first being trundled in on rails by grots, singing bravery songs. The KFF hexes tilt to contain it. Weird Boy prisms hum. The thing lights with a sullen red and goes through orange toward faith. He flies. The beams write an X across the casing. It doesn't die, it stalls. Flaring, dimming, flaring again as the wah pushes and his heat argues back. He drops, lands, and eats it. The taste is old sun and old war and copper sugar. Half becomes mass, plates singing, spurs gleaming. Half becomes a stride forward in the accelerator. The next transformation arrives like a door, so used it forgot it was a door. He stands up taller without getting taller. The city gets quieter without getting quieter. In the shape of him, there's less wasted anything. The second wog candle detonates prematurely when three weird boys disagree on whose thoughts are prettiest. The blast slams him sideways. He plants a heel through a Megagargant's ankle and uses it like a brace to stand again. The beam coughs and draws a neat line across the explosion's throat. Fire remembers it's supposed to fall down and obeys. The old mech, watching through a greasy lens, grins a grin full of metal. Right, he mutters. Bigger sun. The addiction becomes the rule. Addiction is a moral word. What he has is physics that learn to smile. The cycle hums with no friction. Stimulus, kill, eat, 50% plate, 50% acceleration, stronger, faster, hotter, go find more. The hunger is not panic. It's a vector that adds to every other vector. When nothing is happening, rare, he steps toward where the next thing will happen. Not as prediction, but as a law. The world will prefer to present him with more. The planet agrees. Factory lines print bite plates as fast as they print bullets. The cult of Da Champa institutes queue etiquette so the best chunks get eaten hottest. Pain boys open seasoning stalls, spice racks of motor oil, squig acid, and powdered gun metal for boys who want to taste good. Weird boys invent flavor walk! A hum that makes his crown spasm happily and the beams go a hair bluer. A minority refuses this gospel. A cult of deny emerges, boys in dull paint who swear they won't be food. They fight like accountants. Cautious, line-holding, big on tractor nets and pit traps. They last 2 days. Doomsday eats their traps, then eats them, and the cult rebrands as the prepared meal without a trace of shame. He flies more now than walks. The city's upper decks become a carousel of angles, every corridor a run-up, every tower a slalom gate. Tractor beams try to draw diagrams on him. He erases them with thin cut lines of heat aimed back at their emitters. Defcoptas swarm like insects and die like jokes. Stompas learn to squat behind KFF walls and peer out like shy buildings, only to have their knees carved out by beams that don't need line of sight. They cook the wall to transparent first and then right through it. The air tastes of hot nails and joy. The sky has a permanent bruise where the KFF lattices are thickest. Grot sells smoked squig on sticks under signs that read, "Spice me, Daddy Doom." Nobody knows what it means. Everybody laughs. The third month's echo, he carries the memory of last month's two-sun event like a bookmark, something to reread, not repeat. The knot inside is different now. It's a turbine, not a storage tank. Energy in, work out, residue retuned into structural truth. It means he doesn't need a single cathedral blast to redraw the map. He redraws it continually. Even so, every few hours the math lines up. Intake high, pressure high, choirs accidentally in key, mechs accidentally in phase. The air goes very quiet and very bright. He lifts a meter, vents shudder. The blue at the edges of him goes winter true. A plate of heat runs out underfoot, waist high, and every KFF hex it touches blooms and dies like a field of metal flowers. The thrust column doubles and he steps up through falling debris without ever needing to push again. The beams write signatures across the sky that a cartographer could use to measure power in units of city. He lands. Eats. The next cycle begins faster. The planet reacts third adjustments doctrine. Doctrine arrives when improvisation has been glorious and expensive. Mega-gargant herding. Instead of lining the titans up for volley fire, tempting tasty, war bosses turn them into shepherds, walking walls that herd boys into lanes that channel his beams toward pre-chosen sinks. It works until he learns to bend the beams at the last 2 seconds by heating the air into lenses. Lift-to-drop tethers. Tractor arrays are braided into ropes that can be thrown like lassos. They catch him twice. In both cases, he simply hands the rope back, shoving a shock ring down the tether into the crew that threw it. The tactic becomes ceremonial, a way to die with a good story. Skynails mechs fire spike-tipped pylons into the air on rockets, then freeze them in place with slabby KFF bubbles. He flies between them at first, then learns to pivot off them as if they were steps, burning weird parabolas through the battle zone. Sunshot. The old mech gets his bigger sun, 3 wog candles braided and lit within an amphitheater of weird boy prisms. It births a storm that makes weather scream. He drinks from it like a tap. When they overlight it, he cuts the overflow into ribbons that wrap his arms like bright snakes, and then vanish into plates. The old mech cries not from sadness. The doctrine's real success is cultural. They normalize being eaten. Volunteers wear laminated tags, soup, roast, crunchy. Pain boys do triage by flavor. Weird boys hum blessings that say, "May your bite unlock a new trick." Entire neighborhoods schedule themselves for feeding days like holidays. The only dissenters are those who think this generosity should be means-tested. They are pelted with hats. The shape of the addiction. It would be convenient if the hunger distracted him, if it made errors he could be punished for. It doesn't. It focuses him into a line so thin you could slice atoms on it. He lands on a balcony stacked with ammo crates and boys with teeth filed into letters. He kills 3 with a forearm sweep, bites, swallows, lifts. The push column narrows. He yawns. Visually, the plates along his ribs open and close, and heat sighs out in a neat ribbon that sets 2 banners gold. He turns his head. The beams go out and stay out, thick, bright, a pair of rails that the fight runs along. He carves an S-curve through a KFF tower, and it falls like a folding chair. Half the bites go to plate, half to pace. The pace becomes its own weapon. A weird boy choir tries for a surprise key change on the 4th bar. He is already tuned by the 2nd. A tractor net unspools, he's already not there. A mega gargant kneels to shield a district. He has already tunneled its other knee out and left the kneeling as a pose. He eats something new. A squigoth prime, bred fat on promethium mash and meanness, its hide lacquered in tank plates. It fights even while dead, legs running in place out of habit. He tears slabs from it like bread, and the half that isn't mass runs to the accelerator with a spark. A little leap forward, a micro-unlock of how to bend his beams around corners by heating the airpath in advance. He tests it instantly. A beam goes out, disappears behind a tower, and a moment later a far KFF explodes along a gentle curve. The grots keeping score put exclamation marks they don't know how to stop drawing. The sky learns his name. Names on Octarius aren't quiet things. They are painted, shouted, welded into banners, and carved into friends with knives during celebrations. The center has had many, to spiky whack, to crump that crump's back, but this month the planet's mouth agrees on a new one because the behavior demands it. Da-Ita Sun, Mork's Toof, too pious doesn't stick. Heat Boy, popular with grots, despised by mechs. And in the end, the one with weight, Doomsday. The word makes Weird Boy head cages hum. It curdles milk. It burns good on banners. It's got punch and prophecy, and the planet likes those. He doesn't answer to it. He doesn't answer at all. But when a tower choir chants it in 3 keys and a mega gargant stomps it in Morse on the decks, his crown does something like a nod, the ridges stepping 2 beats in time as the beams swell thicker for a breath and then relax. The old mech's last thesis. The old mech rolls out one more plan, and it's not bigger. It's weirder. "We nick his hunger," he tells his crew, tapping the plan so hard the ink runs. "If we can't starve him, we'll eat what he eats." He builds Guzzler Gargants, titans with maws like funfair rides and internal grinders lined with KFF nodes to digest anything they swallow into whack charge. The plan, when he eats, they eat the same thing at the same time and steal the benefit. They march out 4 abreast, flags like teeth, mouths yawning wide. Boys cheer so hard their ribs shift. He lets the first bite. It swallows him up to the waist and clamps shut. Inside is a hurricane of saws and green lightning. The grinders engage with civic pride. He doesn't resist. He eats back. The grinders slow. The wah charge gets drunk by his crown. The KFF nodes pop like grapes in a hot pan. He walks out the other side holding its spinal gear like a child with a broken toy and bites it. Half to plate. Half to pace. A little spark to aiming. The second Guzzler tries to swallow the first to get credit for its friend's kill. He cuts its tongue off with beams and feeds it to himself. The third and fourth backpedal, then trip on their own drool. The old mech watches and writes one last line in big block letters that make grots tear up. "Bigger wag is the only way." Then he goes to light another sun. The horizon tilts. What was local becomes continental. The fight has mass in the story sense now. Orc radio, shouted, drummed, and waved in flags, synchronizes. Whole continents march. Railheads load only 2 things, shells and volunteers. Rivers get paved over into gun roads. Bridges are built purely so they can be destroyed dramatically when the beams come, because morale is an energy source too. The planet leans in. The whack field hums. Weather grows green edges. At night, the slag sea glows and the sky answers with auroras that taste like coins on the tongue. He flies until he stops needing to think the verb. He is up. The push column is now a habit like standing. When he lands, it's a choice. The beams are not attacks, they are statements, each one the minimum sentence required to edit a city. His plate is a language of closed questions. Every spur, every seam an answer to a test, he wrote 5 seconds earlier. The addiction is not extremity, it is homeostasis at a higher set point. The system has found a curve it loves and runs along it, and everything that touches the curve gets hot. The message changes he has never spoken. He still doesn't. But the planet talks for him. War bosses in speeches, weird boys in keys, grots in chalk, pain boys in tattoos, mechs in accidents. And sometimes the world writes what a thing would say if it had use for words. Once his body wrote keep coming in fault lines and crushed gantries because that's what equilibrium demanded, input to sustain the loop. Now the loop sustains itself. Hunger remakes range into a solved problem. Intake is not hard, acceleration is not optional, strength is a staircase he's already halfway up. The vector has flipped. He stands at the center of a city that has built itself to be eaten and looks out over a horizon of green banners and black smoke. The crown along his skull steps twice like a nod. The beams go out, not as a threat, but as underlining. He rises, easy, like a bad idea you can't sit on. Around the slag sea, the chanting shifts. Nobody plans it. The syllables choose themselves. The first war boss to shout the new words isn't a poet. He's a man with a megaphone and scars where hats used to be. The weird boy choir picks up the cadence and makes it a storm. Mechs weld it to gantry rails. Grots chalk it across the backs of squigs. Pain boys stitch it into armbands so even the dead can carry it when they stand up again tomorrow. The skyline says it in fire. The decks say it in boots. The air says it in heat shimmer. Doomsday is coming.